in the sex industry, and then we're going to talk a little bit to Gina about how the internet is affecting our sex lives in general. So with that, Gina, tell us a little bit about revenge porn, what you're seeing.
Okay, well, the definition of revenge porn is sexually explicit media that's being distributed without the person's consent, and that's the key word, without. And it's usually distributed by an ex or somebody that you're intimate with that's trying to humiliate you or exploit you. And it's just, a lot of people do it because there's so much more access to internet, and it's just an easier way to embarrass your ex-partner.
And have you seen some of these cases? I mean, have you treated people that have been victims of this? Or maybe, Gina also does a radio show. Has anybody come into your radio show talking about their particular stories?
Yes, so my radio show is called RX for Love and Success, and last night I had a caller who, he didn't know that his wife had cameras in his house, and he was having sex with multiple partners in their home while she was either out of town or at work.
Oh, wow.
And he didn't know this, so she got all the video and put it out on the internet, all over Facebook. So now he's trying to see if he can sue her, but there's, I guess we'll get into the legality.
We'll get into the legality.
Definitely a hard issue for him now.
Tell us a little bit more. Have you heard of any cases of revenge porn?
Yeah, so what's super interesting, I think, for folks my age, right? Like, if you grew up documenting your whole life with your smartphone, the risk for revenge porn is higher. You know, it's not just doing a sex tape, it's like having just one nude photo or one topless photo. If that gets, you know, you send that to a partner at the time, they keep it, things go wrong, and that makes its way online. Previous to this new law going into effect, that was completely legal. You know, it can be incredibly damaging. Your bosses can find out about it. Many companies won't hire you if there are nude photos of you out online. And even when the law does go into effect, one problem with that will still be it's on you to flag that for the authorities. So increasingly, right, people will say, okay, if something that you own copyright to winds up on the internet in a way that you don't consent to, now it's illegal, it's a crime, fine. But it's still on you to get it down. So you basically have to be the watchdog of your own reputation. Even websites that the government will put up, like top 10 ways to protect yourself, it's all on you. And like the number one thing they say is don't ever let that content be taken. So that frustrates me, you know, as a woman, right? Or like as anybody, you kind of want the expectation of privacy. If you want to make a sex tape, you should be able to. But the number one tip for staying safe is just don't make it, because that's what the authorities are going to come back to you with.
But why do we want to make it? Now that we have this technology, why do we want to take pictures? Why do we want to make it? Because it's not only the tape that's made for distribution, that there's prostitution involved, but I mean, there's legitimate reasons for doing this. You have a relationship, maybe it's a distance relationship, and this is one way that you play with your partner without ever expecting this to get out.
Right, I think also we live in an age of this being Insta-famous, you know, and I think everybody wants to be the next porn star without even really wanting to be a porn star. So I think by having just your partner or somebody see pictures of you naked or have the sex video out, it makes you feel good. It boosts up your self-esteem. So I think there's that aspect of just that excitement behind it. So you're right, just how can you do this without being scared that's going to be distributed?
When you talk to your patients about, you know, them exchanging pictures with their significant others, do they ever go into, you know, why they do it, what do you hear?
Well, I think, you know, in a relationship, when it starts getting boring, you know, two people get together, they become one, and it starts getting boring. And then, so instead of cheating, you want to keep it fresh, you want to keep it alive. So you do things like exchange nude pictures, or do sexting, or do a sex tape, and it just makes it almost like that stranger aspect. Oh wow, you know, you're like a different person. You're sending me a picture. It's so new. So it is really good for your relationship, but it's how to keep that privacy and how to keep it safe without feeling that it's ever going to be put out there.
It's not good when all of a sudden millions and millions of people are watching it.
Exactly.
So you had the example of the person that didn't know that the wife had a camera and she was filming everything that was going on, and then I suppose she uploaded it and it went viral. Mm-hmm. How many of you think that man should have had the right to not have those tapes out there on the internet? Not? And why? Tell me a little bit about why you think that was the case.
Why you shouldn't have had it on there?
What did she had on there?
No. Why you shouldn't have had
right,
it on there?
Right. Why?
That's her. Well, on the woman's side, I mean, I would speak for women. I don't think that it's fair to the woman to have something that was probably to be a porn star, to have that out there, it could basically ruin your life. If you're a teacher, if you're somebody who has a sort of profession that it would be looked down on, I believe that that could literally ruin your life. And he is basically playing with fire. He's destroying it.
Legally, there's an expectation of privacy as well.
Okay, yeah, anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, that case is worse because he didn't know.
Right. So there's probably a breach there. And that case is unusual because when we're talking about revenge porn, we're usually talking about women being victimized because it's generally women that are objectified. It's rare, right?
It is.
You say
Well, usually men will say, well, go ahead, put my picture out there, thank you. You know, a lot of guys say that, but in this case it was so embarrassing because, you know, now it's a sex video of him having an affair, several affairs in their home.
Hence the term revenge porn.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
I think that people need to start realizing that we live now in a society where you cannot do anything without it being recorded. It's a very blatant fact, and if you don't want people to know that you did something, you just shouldn't do it in general because you can't go then, oh, I wanted to have an affair, but I didn't want anyone to know. It's like, well, why'd you have an affair in the first place then?
Well,
Because
this is sex, and you're doing it in the privacy of your home or in the privacy of somewhere, and you're not expecting to be recorded.
I don't think that it's a matter of sex, it's just a matter of action and the reputation that you choose to have of yourself with that. I know there was a video of Ariana Grande, she's like a pop singer, she went into a Dunkin' Donuts and she was licking donuts like from the shelf. Video went viral because of who she is, and you know, she was like, oh, I was just at Dunkin' Donuts with my friends. It's like, no, you weren't just at Dunkin' Donuts, you're a public figure, one, you know, that's regardless of the point, but two, you're in a location that while you might think you're in the privacy of whatever, you're not. You're always being watched no matter where you are, whether in your home, on the street, at school, at work. All of your actions are being monitored and recorded, and that's just the world we live in today.
Right. And you, go ahead.
I think it's interesting, right? There's like probably a little bit of an age difference between the two of you, and I'm wondering, like, if there's something about where you are at your life that is it a little bit easier for you to accept? Okay, if I don't want people to see it, then I'm just not going to do it. And for you, you're like, you have this expectation of privacy, like, F that, I'm not gonna live in that world. Yeah. I think for me, like, what I would say to folks is, if you don't want it out there, don't do it. But that is so hard for me to say, but it's like, it's an awful thing to reconcile, like, this is the world we're living in.
And Cleo is more your age, where I'm more your age, and I think that you're right, and I take those precautions. But on the other hand, you know, why should I? Gina just said, you know, it's kind of good for your relationship to do this, and I think that's where you're coming from.
There's a sexual, it's sometimes it's sexy to record yourself, right?
It is,
It's
yeah.
interesting, right? I mean, when you go into that as, you know, as a woman, it's nice to see that. And maybe you want to do that with a partner because it turns you on. You know, as a photographer, I know I get turned on by that. So now, should you be the one then recording it and not the man, and not give it to the man? That would be the other thing, you know?
And now you're going into my territory because I'm setting you up and you guys don't know it. So let's say that you have those pictures and you've exchanged it with your partner and it's gotten out there. And Gina's right when she talks about an element of revenge porn requiring identification. So when we started to see these cases, we started to see generally women who had been taped or videotaped. Somebody took those images or that video, put it up on the internet, identifying these women. So these were not porn stars, these were regular women that got frisky with their significant other, and all of a sudden, other neighbors saw it, their boss saw it, their you know, child's principal saw it, and they were devastated. I mean, think about it. Just stop for a minute and put yourself in their shoes. If you had a video of you out there and everybody who's close to you would get to see it. Now, what do you do? What do you do? How do you get it down? How do you think you get it down?
It's forever out there.
So let me tell you the problem these women were having. These women called the cops and said, oh my God, it's destroying my life, get it down. The cops said, it's not a crime. There's nothing I can do. In a lot of cases, you know, they tried, you know, to see whether they had any other legal recourse. Well, guess what? If you shoot a picture of me, it's your picture. I have no copyright rights to that picture. So there was very little remedy that the law could offer. And a lot of times, the worst thing that happened in these women's life, the justice system had zero remedy for. So what happened was, you know, there started, you know, this revenge porn movement, and revenge porn is now a crime I don't even know if it makes it to 20 states. Here in Florida, it just passed in the spring. It failed in the last legislative session. And the reason that I'm talking about it is because it's coming into effect October 1st. So as of October 1st, if you engage in this activity that's actually defined, I'm going to give you the statute, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about it, but you can research it on your own because then it gets hyper technical. So it's statute 784.049, and it's called the Sexual Cyber Harassment Statute. If you engage this activity, you're now committing a crime. Okay, you know about it now, but you can see where maybe like, you know, your brother who's young or your teenage son or anybody, you know, out of spite could do something like this and get into real trouble. So basically, you know, it's an image of another person. It doesn't matter that you took the image with their consent. If you publish it into the internet and it's sexually explicit, and that's a term of art, that's defined, without the person's consent, with intent to cause substantial emotional harm. So there has to be that intent factor from the person. A picture could be a picture, a motion picture, a video. There has to be personal identification information together with that image. And there's a whole category of things that constitute personal information, like the person's voice. It doesn't only have to be your name and address. Let's say that I'm speaking, and from my voice, people could kind of say, hey, that's Terry, even though I don't see her face, and you know, well, there you go, there's personal information. Sexual explicit image, of course, is nudity and what you would expect. It is a woman's breast that is less than fully covered, so if you have kind of a see-through shirt, that already qualifies. Sexual conduct includes, in one of these tapes, it could include actual physical contact with a person's clothed genitals. So it doesn't always have to be like the ultimate sex act. That's, you know, why you have to look at these things. It's a misdemeanor in the first degree, and the first time, you know, that you're before a judge on this charge, you could be sentenced up to a year in prison. You could be charged up to $1,000. If it happens twice, it becomes a felony in the third degree, and you could be punished as long as 5 years in prison. And you know, one of the interesting things about this law now is that it authorizes civil damages. So, you know, if I'm filing a lawsuit because I've been a victim, I could get either $5,000 or actual damages if I could prove it's more than $5,000. And the statute gives me the right to collect attorney fees and costs, which is unusual. You guys may think that, you know, the winning party always gets attorney fees and costs. It's an unusual case. So it could get really expensive for the person that all of a sudden has to defend, you know, one of these cases. Another interesting thing, it's hard to get these laws passed. So in order to pass this law, they had to give a get out of jail free card to the people that service, you know, people that are interactive computer servicers, information service, communication service. So the only thing that the law goes after, that gives you the right to go after, is the person that actually uploaded this with the intent to harass. So if now you have 20 websites that have picked it up, you have, you know, it's not a criminal act for those website operators to have that content up. So now you get a little bit of right and protection, but it's not absolute. You know, there's still a long fight in terms of revenge porn, you know, and actually getting protection for the victim. So that's revenge porn. Now you know a little bit about it, and let's move on. So one of the things when I met Cleo that I told her, I said, Cleo, in this general, that's how I said it, right? In this general conversation about social media, what people want to know now is about monetization, you know, and business systems. So what are we seeing in terms of the sex industry, and how has digital empowered different business models? So talk to us a little bit about Cameo.
Okay, so I told her that I thought one of the most interesting things that's happening for folks my age in sex and the internet is the takeoff of the camming industry. Camming is super basic, right? All you need is an ID to show that you're 18 and a webcam, which pretty much everyone has. So camming can be something really blasé and boring. Like, you could just hook up your webcam and you can paint your nails and you can charge people for that. Like, it can be that, but usually it's not, right? Usually there's a sexual component to it. Now, to put it into perspective, camming is estimated at $1 billion annually. And some estimates for the porn industry are 14 billion to 4 billion. So regardless of where it falls over there, camming is just a fraction of the online sex industry. But it is taking off in a way that I think is very interesting for my generation, because one thing I've noticed in covering folks my age is that there's like this overall demand for authenticity that I don't think was already there. And camming is the ultimate authentic experience because it allows, the art of camming, people tell me, is that it allows you to be exactly who you are. When you're an adult film actress, you get on set and you are playing a role. That is the opposite of what people want in camming. So say you're really into cooking naked and your hair is dyed jet black and you have like a Betty Page tattoo. That's like super niche look that you can make a lot of money off of in doing camming, because tons of people around the world now can like focus in on you and you can be exactly who you want to be. So the way that camming works, right, is you know, you get a cam, you usually sign up with like one of 5 or 6 major platforms that exist in the country. They sign you to a contract, you get a program, and then basically a camming platform is sort of like an online casino. Like, these companies are smart. They know that people really like to play games and they like to spend money online. So a customer will pay $100 for like 100,000 tokens, and then he's in this world of camming and he can choose to go into any room. And in that room will be a model who is doing something that she really likes to do. So again, right, maybe you like to like cook naked and like that's your thing. Or maybe you're a stay-at-home mom and there are like lots of kids' toys around and that's your thing. So camming allows the model to be exactly who she wants to be. So the customer goes in and there's a public chat room and the model's just in there talking and there's lots of people. And then they can pay for her time. So they're not paying for services, right? Like, it's not like I'll pay you $5 to take off your shirt. It's I'll pay you per minute. So it's kind of like in the same way that you pay a masseuse per minute. So you're in the public chat room and people are like chatting and maybe everyone says, okay, why don't we all chip in 100 coins and see Sally do XXX. So then she makes a lot of money that way. Now, if you want to take her private, then you can take her private. And when I talked to these girls, right, I was like, well, what happens when you go private? A lot of times, people, if you do this well, you start very small. You just start a conversation with this person, like, hey, you know, I'm Jane, I live here, what do you like, what are you into? And if you're, you know, you do your craft well, you form relationships with these people, so they keep coming back to you, and you don't like immediately, very rarely at least for any of the women that I talk to, do they ever just dive right into a sexually explicit act. They're smart about it, so they probably won't get super sexual with people till at least like the 5th time that someone takes them private. And it's interesting, right, because then you're kind of creating this economy of romantic relationships online. Like, you can be having these private, intimate moments with tons of people throughout the day, and this is happening. So a cam girl, just so you guys know, like a cam girl, if she just focuses on that and she's not working a part-time job, she can make about $1,000 a month, and then on her 2nd month, she can make $2,000 and then go up to $3,000. Like, a really good cam model will make between like $4,000 and $5,000 a month. To put that into perspective, a new girl in the porn industry can make about $800 a shoot, if it's like something basic.
So are these American prices?
Yeah, so this is US dollars. So it's nothing like the money that you would make for one porn shoot, but the thing to keep in mind is it's so easy because you control everything. Like, you're in your own room and you can set your own hours and you don't have to commute anywhere, and it's literally like you roll out of bed, do that for a couple hours, and then like turn off the camera, and then maybe you go to school that night. So this is an industry where I think it appeals to folks my age because we are so into doing exactly what we want when we want to do it, and camming takes all the mega third-party players that exist in the porn industry out of the equation. So, like, I don't think everyone, probably no one, maybe no one in this room would be a good candidate for camming, but it's these women consider themselves like models. They're not porn actors, for example. So, yeah.
So when we started talking about this, and Cleo explained it to me, I'm like, that sounds like those peep shows. Remember the peep shows of like a million years ago? You know, I think Madonna has a video where you kind of even see this. And we were just talking about revenge porn and not wanting your image all over the internet. So how does that work in camming?
Okay, so that's one really interesting thing with camming, right? So it used to be, camming is not like being in a porn because you're not touching anybody, and that's like a really important distinction that all of these models will make. A lot of porn actresses do camming, but it doesn't go the other way around. So cam models, if you do draw a parallel, will kind of say this is like the digital era of of dancing. So the problem with dancing, right, is that usually if you're dancing in a club that is centrally located to where you live. So your family's there, like your parents find out. With camming, there's always the risk you'll be found out, right? So again, like anything you don't want everybody to know about, don't do it. But what's interesting about camming is that what's interesting about camming is that if you live in Toronto, Canada, you can decide to block out access for anyone that lives in Toronto. And if you don't want anybody in your country to see, you can block out the entire country. So, yeah.
Question, once they start interacting, if people get screenshots or information,
That's why she's ultimately right. If you don't want it, just don't do it.
So here's camming initially took off on Skype because everybody can do it. Some people are still camming on Skype. That's really stupid. That's an unsecure network. If you're taking camming seriously, and it is you can make a decent amount of money in a year and get out. You don't want to be doing it on Skype. You want to get in with one of these 5 major platforms, and they have very secure systems. Now, after Ashley Madison, I don't think anyone is going to be we're completely preventable to hackers, but these are systems that are very secure, and they invest in that. And in that way, you have more expectation of privacy, but certainly you're never totally safe.
Are they recording the sessions from their end, or is it more like a Snapchat from their end?
It is streaming live. There is no recording.
What I mean is that content belongs to whoever went in, right? Because you can record from your phone if you're watching on the screen, you can do anything.
So exactly, on your end, you can have you could just hold up your iPhone and be shooting what's happening there too. So that's a very obvious way to leak. But I mean, listen, it's not safe. It's not something I'd recommend to my friends. But say you want to block out the entire side of North America, you can do that too, and you can only cam to Romania and a couple choice countries. So there's that potential there.
I think it's safe to say though that any woman that would cam would be a woman that already isn't really interested in her privacy. You know, I don't really see how a woman would be a teacher or somebody who wants to be a politician or somebody who wants to be in a news, journalism or anything that would actually go ahead and do something like that.
Not intelligently.
No.
Not intelligently, for sure.
But who are they? Tell us who they are. Tell us why they do it. You mentioned, who the viewers are. Tell us what makes people want to see this.
Well, I deal with the dark psychological effects of this. So I'll give you some examples. So some of my patients I see a lot of porn stars, a lot of fetish models. I have one patient, for example, that she's a muscle cam star. So what she does, she actually got a condo above the gym, and she works out all day long. She doesn't eat, she doesn't drink water, so that her veins can pop out. And men will pay for her just to flex and just to show her muscles and her veins. But the problem is, think about it, she has an eating disorder now, she's just messed up, she has body image issues. So that's that side of it. But I also deal with the people that watch it and the psychological aspect behind that, because it is a very secretive behavior for a lot of men. I have a patient, for example, that he's a top surgeon in Tampa, where I'm from, and he has a family, he's married, has children, but he watches these cam videos while his the kids are at school and while the wife's at work.
And why does she develop an eating disorder? Why does he watch this all the time? There's an addiction to this?
There's an addiction because you want to be the best. People are going to pay you, and these men, I'm sure you saw this, I mean, they'll tell you, they're really mean. They'll say, you're too fat, you don't look good enough, you need to lose more weight, and this is how they make money. So it's feeding this. It's an addiction. They need to make more money, they need to look beautiful, they need to look good. So it starts messing with them mentally.
What do you think, Leo?
It's so interesting. I actually see, like in any industry, right, you're gonna have an entire spectrum of experiences, but from my experience, and it makes a lot of sense why you'd see what you see, but from my experience, Cami is the opposite. It's really empowering because, and this is like the argument that I would make about porn in general, yes, it's everywhere and there are so many negative aspects of this, but on the other hand, it does allow for everything to be kind of normalized, right? Like 10 years ago, if you thought you were really weird because you liked spanking or something, well, that's a little bit bad, but like a very, very niche kind of kink, now there are places for you to go so that you know you're not the only one. It's different when you're in Miami or a major metropolitan city. You can basically find anything you want, but you have to remember, like, a lot of people in the world live in more rural spots. So the internet allows for this like global community, and what's cool from a camera's perspective, right, is like some of the cameras I talked to, they needed money. Like one, for example, was a makeup artist, and during like the wedding season, she had tons of income, but then when it was winter and no one was getting married, she couldn't make ends meet. So someone was like, well, why don't you do bartending, or why don't you do dancing? And she was like, I don't like to be touched, I'm not hot enough. And this friend of hers who was doing camming was like, you don't have to be this sort of like perfect aesthetic. In the world, online, there are people who will like you just for you because that's what you're already into. So like I said, like this is a woman who's, a makeup artist and probably like, not super fit. And what appealed to people was that she was really into motorcycles. So she would like fix her motorcycles in an erotic way for folks. And they were like, you are beautiful, you're amazing, and she can just be who she is. And interestingly, it's like boosted her confidence. So it's kind of how you work it, right? It's like,
it's all
and that's like how you interpret things in general, right? Maybe you're empowered by it, or maybe it just like runs you into the ground.
Yeah, because when I went to the fetish convention over in Tampa, I met so many cam models, and there was actually couples, and they had great relationships, and they were really happy, and the women are just, well, I do this because I just love people to watch me. I love sex, I love people to watch me, my husband's okay with it, and they were healthy. So you're right, it's all a matter of, some are good, some are bad. Yeah.
And we talk about any woman in the sex industry as victimized, and there's plenty of reason to support that, and that's a very vast conversation. But when we were talking, I said certainly there's somebody out there who would do it regardless, even if they had all the money in the world and they didn't,
Exactly. They love it.
They love it.
It turns them on.
Showing themselves out. And that's those people. Those are the people that I've always said, there is two types of porn. There's the porn for the girls that did it because, they were molested when they were children and they need money because they're in some crazy
which is most women in porn.
Which is most women, and then there's this side. The ones that love it, the ones that get off on it. And I think that if porn was only the ones that loved it and got off on it, then I wouldn't have a problem.
Right. As a feminist, you have to accept that, right?
Yeah, everybody's different, right?
Yes.
And we all are happy in different ways.
So let's talk, she said porn. Do all these camming, I'll call them camming stars, I don't know. Models, there you go, thank you.
Yeah.
Camming models.
Do all these camming models evolve into some type of pornography?
Totally not. So that's the thing, right? Like most porn actresses, if they're smart, right? If they're with the digital age, they're camming, because camming is also, because no one's in the room with you, there's no body contact, it's easier on your entire system. So you can do camming and it's like less intensive. But most camming models do not become actors because it's a completely different thing, right? Like either you're interacting with yourself or you're interacting with someone else. And camming models and camming actresses, like what they both do in the same way is they use social media. So a good cam model, like if she isn't worried about her privacy, she is using Twitter, Mostly Twitter, right? Because sexual content is banned from Instagram and Facebook, but they're working their brand, and it's something they're like using everything full circle to contribute to their overall popularity and fandom.
And what makes people view this, especially when there's not a porn content?
Yeah, I think it is, like you said, it's reality. So I think with pornography, it's a fantasy, but with camming, it's real. You feel like you're actually just watching someone's life, and you're being sneaky, and you're really there in that moment. So I think that's kind of what attracts them to
It's
that.
an extension of reality TV.
Exactly, yes.
All right. So there's another business model that we're seeing. Camming is one of them, and the other one is the porn industry, the way it's developing in Miami. And Cleo, tell us a little bit about that.
So California, you probably know, passed a law, right, that it requires porn actors to use condoms. And that has been a huge blow for the porn industry, which was basically born in the way that we think of it out of Southern California. So since then, there's been a large shift to the state of Nevada. There has a booming porn industry, and also Miami. And I don't know why that is, maybe because Miami has had like a natural tendency towards vice in general, but there is definitely a booming amateur porn scene here, and when I cover adult content in general, I always, as much as I can, try to see it through the view of how it is positively and negatively impacting our lives. So I'm always looking for the bright side in these stories. Unfortunately, when it comes to Miami, I didn't hear like many great things about the scene here. What I did hear was, I don't know if you guys saw Hot Girls Wanted. I personally avoided seeing it until I did this panel because I knew we'd probably bring it up.
Have you heard about it? Hot Girls Wanted. It's on Netflix. It's a documentary about the way young girls are lured into porn through technology itself.
Yeah, so I was hoping it wouldn't be true, right? It kind of tells the tale of 4 young women who live in various states of the country, all 18, all who answered an ad on Craigslist that's like, want to get on a plane and are you beautiful, ? Free ticket, apply here. So they're like, oh, what's this? And they want to move out of their parents' house. They want to be independent. And so they respond to this ad. It's run by a guy who's based here in Miami. He's an agent. And what he does is he has a pretty nice house somewhere here in Miami. It has 5 bedrooms. He pays for these girls to come out. They're 18, like I said. And sure, many of them come from bad, challenging backgrounds, but not everyone does, right? Some people just want to get the hell out of their parents' house, and this sounds fun. So they come out here, they come to Miami, and then they're told it's modeling, but it's not just modeling, right? They're getting involved in boy-girl scenes, girl-girl scenes, and they live with this guy, they pay him rent, he gets a portion of their cut, say they make $800 per scene. And they, okay, once they reconcile, now I'm doing porn, they think, okay, I can make this work for me. I'm making what feels like a lot of money to someone my age, and I'm going to take off, I'm going to be the next Jenna Jameson. But by virtue of the way porn is now, consumers don't really want this polished, fantastic mega porn star. They want to see many people really want to see a very young ingenue type. And there's so many of them coming in the door that basically once the girl comes in and does, they call it boy scene, boy girl scene, boy girl scene, and then there's gang banging, which is kind of when one woman is with 5 other guys in one scene. And that's kind of the spectrum you can get to. You can enter at the base of boy-girl scene and get to the far end of the spectrum within 6 months, and they are done with you.
Right, and why? Why is this, very short shelf life and a difficult one? Because you go from idyllic, if you will, if there's such a thing in this world, to total debasement.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many options, like you said. I mean, it's just who's the next person. But I think too, I've seen there's a business model. So some people, if they are smart about it, they'll take it upon their hands to start producing and start doing different things, like behind the scene work with.
And that's the other thing we're seeing in Miami, right? So tell me a little bit about that. That's the other business model.
So it's cool because anyone in this world, like, you can be your own anything, right? You can be your own journalist. We see that here. Like, all you need is a cell phone. You can be your own producer. All you need is like a webcam and a website. Like, you have to link up with someone who knows how to run a website. But so that's possible, right? Like, you can get into an industry like this. If you're smart, you notice that the people making the real money are actually behind the camera. So you use like a little business acumen, and then you start bringing your friends on, you make your own content, and then you partner up with someone who can run a website for you.
And Fusion has done stories where we have some girls that are both behind the camera and in front of the camera. They produce their own content.
That is ideally where everyone would go, but it's just not how it works.
The reality is the uglier.
Yeah, and these girls are so broken, a lot of them, by the time they've done all this, that they don't even have the energy or the mind to even go there. You know, they just don't even know what to do with their lives. And some of them turn into prostitution, or, you know, they just end up just...
Which is why at the end, these stories are always difficult stories. Yeah. You know, even though we're focusing on how technology is empowering the new business model, this is always a risky area, right? Mm-hmm. So... Okay. Anything else regarding this industry?
No, I mean, like, the one thing I would end with is that there is this criticism overall with porn that there's like a pornification of our culture. Porn is everywhere, and I would like to think like, well, porn was always there. It has always been there. As soon as we had the ability to record motion video, porn was there instantly with like very, very basic like smut videos, they used to call it. So there's always been there, but it is without, you know, like across the board, the emergence of the internet has made porn more available than it ever was before. And people in the industry will say the biggest trend that they've noticed is its quantity over quality. And like, you know, you can argue like, I don't know, what was a great quality porn movie, and you'd stump people, but basically now the appeal for reality porn, to make it look like it's a young girl who wouldn't be doing this normally, that means that like more and more and more and more and more girls can do it, and anybody can film it, and anyone can upload it to a tube site, Pornhub, YouTube, and it's free. So
yeah, and porn's not necessarily bad. I mean, for a lot of my patients, as a psychologist and a sex therapist, I actually prescribe pornography. I'm like, you know, the couple will come into my office and the man was like, well, I don't know what to do, and they will go watch a video, go learn how to do it, you know, and that way they have a better sex life.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's not that it's bad. It can be bad, but it's definitely everywhere. Mm-hmm. It's everywhere.
Along the lines of what you're saying, I read an article recently that talked about porn as being the virus that penetrated the first developments. You know, so whenever anything is innovative and first comes online, whether it's internet or whatever, you know, people use it, or you know, it's porn that first takes off, and then as it becomes more mainstream, then we start using it for educational reasons, and we start using it for other reasons. But you know, and when you're talking about quality versus content, of course, I mean, there's points of view that would say everything about pornography, there's nothing ever positive about it, but by comparison, you know, when you look at the Playboy pictures to what we have today, I mean, it almost looks artistic, doesn't it? You know?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it looks different, right? It looks polished, and that is expensive. To make things look polished, you need a lot of money, and so that it used to be a time when not everyone could make porn because only the established studios had the finances to do it. Now, that's out the window. No one wants to see someone that they know came in, got their hair done, has done hundreds of porns before. Like, that's not interesting. Now they want the reality porn. Yeah. They want the reality show. So it makes it so everybody can do it.
Mm-hmm. So Gina, tell us a little bit about how the internet has changed sex and our sex lives in general.
Yeah, well, I think there's kind of this tolerance, or there's this, okay, you want to have sex, but then you start watching porn and it starts getting okay, a little bit dirtier and dirtier and dirtier. So you start living in this fantasy. So when you are with your partners, you're expecting more. You have these expectations of what is sex supposed to be like, how it's supposed to feel like, what am I supposed to do? And you're in a regular life, it's not always going to be this fantasy. And I think that's what happens with a lot of couples, and that's why there's problems, because you expect it to be this crazy porn scene, and it's not always going to be like that.
Are we seeing mobile as opposed to traditional internet access also playing a part? I mean, what effect, if any, of that's happened? It's not happening.
You mean that people are watching on their phones?
Like hiding under the
a
covers?
lot of the conversation nowadays is turning from, internet and social media to internet and social media, but on mobile devices.
Well, this is really interesting. I'd actually be super, I assumed everyone was watching porn on their phones because
Generation.
it's my generation.
True.
We're watching
Yeah.
everything on our phones. But this is every single source that I've ever spoken to will say if I'm at home, I'm on my laptop, I'm on my computer. So I don't know what that is. It's a strange conundrum that we would finally disconnect from our phones to get on the computer. But maybe maybe sex is the last vestige of I want it big.
Yes.
I want it big screen.
So here's another documentary, if you ever have time, that addresses a lot of what Gina and I were talking about in terms of how has sex on the internet affected us as a society, and it's called Men, Women, and Children. So look for that one as well. Any questions? Any other comments?
Can I ask how old are you?
28.
Okay, I'm 30, and for me, it's really hard to understand the downward position talking about revenge porn because it's not realistic. I think we have to focus on love and more important on sex education.
Right.
I just wanna
And a lot of activists are focusing on these laws so that when people do become victims of it, they actually have tools to fight back.
Yeah, because it's not realistic. It's everyone's
That's the problem.
It's true, yeah.
That's the problem. I mean, she's right, but the thing is, it's just like the abstinence. I don't know, school of
Right,
thought. Does it
right.
work? Well, maybe it does for a little while. Is it going to work forever? Should it?
I think it's more about how you feel about yourself, because on one side of the spectrum, we have this whole feminist movement where everyone's hashtag free the nipple and wants to post all their nudes. Instagram's taking them down, Facebook takes them down, and then on the other side, we're upset because our ex-boyfriend shared a picture of our tits. So, it's kind of just, it really comes down to personally how you feel about the situation and how you choose to embrace it, because there's always going to be people that are very, secluded and very reserved and don't want anyone to see anything, and then there's other people on the other side who are if it was up to them, they'd be walking on the street without a shirt on. But that also plays into society's view of it and how society as a whole handles the situation. And right now we're kind of at a dead middle between left and going right, because we're telling people we want to free the nipple and it not be a thing and not censor it on TV or in the media or in content online, and now we're passing laws that prevent that.
But the difference is, if you wanted to walk down the street with your shirt, it would be on you. You had the agency to show your breasts. If it gets,
you had the choice to show it in the first place. Someone took that picture. You had to show them your boobs. They didn't rip your shirt off and rape you to take the picture.
You're with a boyfriend in a private situation. That's a very different thing than me saying, hey, I just want to go out in the street. I don't care who sees. That's a public situation. It's very
Well, the other thing,
when you're taking the picture, you are not only consenting to that image, but you're giving the person who took it or who owns it the right to do whatever they want with it. Because you can show someone the picture on your personal phone, and then it's your personal media and your personal everything. But the second you give it to someone else, you're making that choice.
the other thing is, you can either have a general view that the outcome would be along the lines of what you're expressing. There's a hypocrisy here as a society, or if you start dissecting and looking at that society a little closer, you may find a generational difference. Because it might be women of my generation fighting harder, for these laws versus the younger women, and the self-esteem is a great issue, because as a woman of my generation, you chime in. We're in the same range. I look at what's going on now, and I'm part of the Instagram culture, and I'm part of the modern music culture, and I can suspend my logic for a little while and enjoy it. But a lot of times I just stop and I say, what would it be like to be growing up as a young woman today? You know, because I have my values from way back when. I have my self-esteem from way back when, and even though I could suspend that for a little while, I have that to fall back on. I'm not sure your generation has that. Not the generation.
No, and not only that the girls now, the younger they're getting, the more to them it's okay to show your boots on Snapchat to somebody.
It's true.
Well,
It's becoming more mainstream that that's part of our sex culture.
they're being sexualized earlier.
The biggest problem, I think, is that any device that we have removes the emotional attachment from the act. So children nowadays, and when I say children, I'm talking anybody under the age of 25. And I'm 47 for the record, so I'm probably older than anybody in this room. Children nowadays, okay, so we're together. Children nowadays do not know how to communicate with one another.
Right.
They don't understand. To them, yelling is all caps. If I'm at home, I have two daughters, a 15-year-old and an 11-year-old. And at 6:30 in the morning, when we're running to get ready for school and get out of the house, if I'm at the back of the house, in my room doing something, and they're at the front of the house, and I need something done, and I start saying, girls, I need blah, 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 and I'm yelling, and my voice is loud because I have to project it. Immediately, one of them will come back, Mom, you don't need to yell at me. You're yelling at me. And I say to them, no, you do not know how to distinguish between what is yelling at someone because you're upset with them and projecting because you need to get a point across. And there is an emotional detachment that exists nowadays. There's an emotional immaturity that exists because everything is filtered through an electronic device. And so you don't know the ramifications of your actions. You can tell someone that's ugly or you're ugly, and no one knows whether it's supposed to be followed by an LOL and LMAO or whatever other, TBT you want to add to it. There is a lack of understanding and growth in that perspective, in that respect. And I think that all of that adds to...
Gets us in trouble?
Of course it does. It adds to the ability to do something stupid and then say, oh, I didn't really mean it, and then it leads to all sorts of
more like a intriguing thought, maybe for psychology would be best. In the area of social conditioning or conditioning someone, maybe like Pavlov, you drink a little triangle and then you salivate. So you have this little behavior with a social medium where you can only like something but not dislike something. And now the other thing is you become addicted because we get conditioned socially. We mimic the same social interactivity. Oh, that was a good joke. Oh, that was a good punchline. And little by little, by tapping, conditioning, almost like training a dog, wouldn't this social media platform also start conditioning someone at such a young age to start being rewarded for such behavior socially that we're already like, oh, this is what we are, the idea of beauty. We're the hedonistic society of all time. Now, this all really gets conditioned at a very young age when you might mature emotionally at a different level, and then socially, and then logically. So then, that's my biggest question. I mean, being the model I'm all for it, but yet again, what is our conversation socially about, hey, maybe you should wait a little bit until you're a little more mature, but that maturity level and the condition is pretty much what have you seen with your page, with clients, maybe with models that they get out, oh, if I didn't get out over 120 likes, that was such a bad picture.
I see so many people suffering from depression, especially young girls that are trying to be models, because it's all this likes. I want to be liked on a button, on Instagram, on Facebook. And you're right, I think that they're starting so young, and it's hard because all the children, when all your friends are on Instagram and Facebook and you're not, it's hard. What do you do as a parent? But if you can, as a mom or a father, hold that back from your children and not get them into that so young, because they're not ready for that emotionally. You're just so conditioned now to want to be liked instantly through all these social medias.
And the other question is, we're not going to be young forever.
Right.
And then you only have a quarter mile as far as your beauty.
Exactly.
So every time you're taking pictures, you might not be looking the same way in the next 20 years. And how psychological is that going to affect? Is it going to be suicide going up? Is that
Yeah.
what's the case?
We're going to be seeing a lot of pictures of old women, you know.
Yes.
You know, you raise very good points because you're ultimately talking about these are tools and how do we use them. And I'm looking around the room, I'm not sure any of you were with us last year, but I want you to know that this panel is an offshoot of a panel we had last year on human trafficking, where we were really focusing on that extreme of this conversation and how social media facilitated human trafficking and help fight human trafficking. So at the end of the day, thank you for making those points, you know, which is, you know, these are tools. We could use them for good, we could use them for bad. What's going on behind them? Do we know how to use them? Do we know what we're doing?
There's a philosopher, his name is Napoleon. He's pretty much the father of communications, and he says, first we build the tools, and the tools shape us.
Yeah.
So it's having that understanding about
Being
the tool.
educated.
And be educated, but now, and I'm a little concerned about this. Recently they did like a search on what was the most searched word in Colombia and in Brazil. It was prostitution, and the laws over there are very skewed. But then again, to our culture, we don't understand what poverty is like, and how somebody can be tapped into completely. Oh, listen, you're gonna make a living if they.
Yes.
So it's.
And camming is exploding in Colombia. Yeah. And child pornography is at the order of the day in Brazil. When you see these technologies that light up a screen when there's exchanges of child pornography taking place on the internet, Brazil is bright and shining.
What are the grassroots organizations that are trying to advocate for?
Well, one of the ones that we had last year in terms of children, we had them here, they spoke a few days ago, is the Child Rescue Coalition. So if you Google them, you can learn a little bit more about them. We'll have a video of their presentation and it'll be up in our YouTube channel in a few days. That's one. All right. So any more questions?
I think I just want to make one last statement. I think as parents, I think one of the things that we should do, especially me, I have a child who's 7, she's going to be soon in that world, you know. And I think one of the talks now is going to be not only about sex, but about putting yourself out there and putting your body out there.
Yes.
You know, and that has to be talked about because us as parents can tell our children, you know, be careful about what you put out there. You never know who's going to, you know, put it out there. You never know what boyfriend's going to put it as revenge for. You don't know what, you know, how that could affect you negatively. You know, I think it's our responsibility.
Absolutely, educate.
It starts at home.
Educate.
Absolutely.
Joe?
Yeah.
So I have two little girls, 12 and 14. So how do I monitor them?
I think it's about to
I track them all the time. They know I'm on them all the time.
I think your mom should talk to them about something. A woman to woman, like, you know, like this, and you know, men are gonna want to see these things, and you're gonna ask for them, and you know, if I were you, like, I mean, my biggest thing is you never share your face. If you're gonna play a game, you never share your face. Correct. And that's why the mom should be the one to talk to them about the birds.
But as a father, I think you have a powerful role where you can be that man in their lives, you know?
You can only practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Protect them from the world, and the world is like encroaching into my house.
But as a father, I mean, what fathers do for girls is they give them confidence,
huge.
and that's not from
Yes.
the outside in; that's from the inside out.
Yeah.
So thank you for sitting through what could be a very uncomfortable conversation, but it's a very important conversation. And I'm going to cut it off here because we have a mob of people waiting to get into this room. Thank you so much, ladies.
Thank you.